So I've always really been interested in the Tudor period for as long as I can remember, but I grew up in London and I did quite a lot of travelling growing up, and I've also always been fascinated by cultural interactions between different cultures around the world and in cities. I came to this subject, I think my mind wandered in a lecture is probably the answer, but I was just interested when I realised that the Tudors had started sailing around the world in the 16th century, and I wanted to know. I read a bit about their encounters with Native Americans, but there didn't seem to be much about their encounters with the Africans that they would have met when they started trading with Africa from the 1550s onwards. So I wanted to read about that. But then when I started reading around that subject, I found this Privy Council letter from Elizabeth I's reign, which said that there were Africans in England in that time, and I was so surprised that I had to reframe my entire area of research, and I just dedicated my doctorate to finding as many examples and evidences of Africans living in Britain in that period, the Tudor and early Stuart period from 1500 to 1640, as I possibly could, and I found evidence of over 360 individuals living here at that time. When people think about Black history, they tend to focus on the history of slavery because slavery was such a big and awful and terrible tragedy and crime in our history that it's difficult to see past it sometimes. I think also that our narrative, the kind of development of Black history as a subject has been dominated by an American narrative. And in the history of America and of African Americans, slavery is obviously a really central part of the story. But I think that there's a lot more to it, and that even within the period of slavery, there are lots of really important stories to tell about Africans taking agency in their own lives, and despite that context, living their lives and fighting for freedom. But also in the period I'm looking at in England, Africans were not in fact enslaved, so it's a different story again. And of course Black history actually stretches back far back into African history before the Europeans even got there, when there were many advanced civilizations and cultures that were far more advanced than Europe was at that time. In Black Tudors, I want to, as I say, tell some exciting stories about Africans in Renaissance England, and share the stories that I've found with the general public. I'm going to take 12 individuals and base a chapter around each of them, and use their lives, tell the stories of their lives, and use those to draw out wider themes, such as the legal status of explaining why Africans were not enslaved in England at this time, such as how they got here, what they were doing, who they ended up marrying or not marrying, what the children that they had, telling all those stories that I've uncovered in the archives. I really want to use the book to challenge people's preconceptions about the period. People often, I say I'm studying Africans in Tudor England, and they say, "Oh, you mean slaves?" And I didn't mean slaves, and I don't mean slaves. And I think these stories need to be told fully and in an exciting and engaging way to convey the importance of this subject to people.